I could.
I could be wrong.
I could.
I could.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
I could be.
I could.
I could be wrong.
Could be.
I could be.
I could be. I could be wrong. Hey guys, welcome back to season 2 of I Could Be Wrong. It's a podcast where Pastor Matthew and I, we sit down with guests from time to time and talk about different things happening in the world. We approach it from a cultural lens, from what's happening in the news, what things that might be controversial, challenging to talk about, and we attempt to model a healthy discussion. How do we talk about these things? How can we disagree in a healthy way? How do we talk about challenging topics? And ultimately, how do these things point back to Christ and how we should function within them as Christians? Thanks for joining me today, Pastor Matthew.
Hey, always an honor to be here.
Yeah, so earlier this week you texted me. This is my first time ever hosting a podcast ever, so I'm a little nervous. But you texted me earlier this week and you're just like, hey, what do you want to talk about for I Could Be Wrong this week? And I was just...
And I want to clarify that because as you say that, sorry to interrupt, but
yeah.
That's the point of the podcast. So we will chart out topics, but we also want to be fluid enough that if something's going on, we want to discuss it.
Yeah.
So it's not
how do we
like,
talk about it?
Hey, what do you want to talk about?
No, for sure. Yeah. This is all in the spirit of preparation. But he texted me, and I don't know why. I didn't even know why I said that. I'm like, I don't know. I'd love to try to convince you that NFTs are cool. And you're like, all right, man, let's do it. So I think that'd be good. I think historically we've talked about this a little bit, and usually it ends with you going, I just think that's pretty silly.
Yeah. And okay, so before the camera started, I said to you I was going to make a comment.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm going to save it for the podcast. This is the comment I was going to say. One of the things I've realized in my life is the more absurd something seems when I first hear it, but is becoming popular, the more I need to pause and really study it. Because not so much that initially it's a great idea, but I think one of the rhythms of our culture is things start off extreme, and then I think it's almost probably just through capitalism that things start off extreme, but people figure out what's the best way to utilize this to bring the best service to people so that they can make money. So like these are some topics. We're going to talk about NFTs, Metaverse today, that initially, and it really does start to date me in my age. There are elements of it that I go, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Yeah. This is so unhealthy. You know, I start there, but I'm learning to take a step back and go, you're going to try to convince me. I still think there are some things that are really bad about it.
Sure.
Especially NFTs. Yeah. And so we'll talk about it, but like there are a few things, but I could be convinced otherwise, but I think in the end, I'm going to point out why your idea is wrong.
Sure. This episode won't be I could be wrong. This is why you're wrong.
Yeah, you're wrong, clearly.
No, super good. Hey, before we get into it, I want to talk about a couple things, meaning definitions of what this stuff is.
Sure, yeah.
So we're talking about the real big word that encapsulates a lot of this stuff or encompasses a lot of stuff is the metaverse. And what people think it is Facebook kind of has a unique branding in their company called Meta, but metaverse is really turning into a new word for like the next phase of internet. So it's not just Facebook's company. The metaverse is what people think is the new wave of what the internet will be. And what it is essentially a complete digital world that you'll access through virtual reality, that you would put on goggles and be able to live in your own virtual home where you're putting in your furniture and putting art on the walls. You'd go to church in the metaverse. You would hang out with friends in the metaverse, all of this stuff. That's what the metaverse is, this next wave of, hey, I'm not just on a web browser. I'm not just on my phone. I'm immersed in this experience of what is now the next wave of the internet. Now, we mentioned NFTs. If you don't know what that is, it's a non-fungible token. And the idea is there's a technology called blockchain that basically validates something's authenticity. So it's a bunch of computers, a bunch of people working to say, yes, this is, people use it for something called Bitcoin. If you don't know what that is, it's online currency. Right. And what the blockchain does is it validates that stuff where if I use my debit card for something, a bank has to back up that I have that money. And they guarantee it. So if I go, they'll give me an overdraft fee, the money will still go through. That's their job, is to guarantee the money being transmission. The blockchain basically skips that process. So blockchain technology makes it so people in a community of computers are validating art, like an NFT, or money. So that is generally, in the vaguest of terms, what some of this stuff is before we get going. So that being said,
hold on. Let's go a little bit deeper in explanation of NFTs. So NFT, the blockchain confirms what it is, that whose ownership of it, but it can be any digital item. Right.
Totally. It could be like an MP3. It could be a voice memo. Usually, what they are now, the popular ones are images that a graphic designer will make.
So there's an image online. Someone creates this picture. The blockchain confirms it. So like if you bought it or created it, it's confirming that you're the owner of it. Then if you sell it, then that can be passed on to someone else. but it really is confirming in the digital. So like in the physical, we don't typically have an issue with that. If I own this water bottle, I physically have it. That's the proof of it.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
holding it in my hand. If I have money, it's in the bank. In the digital world, that hasn't been a thing.
No, you can screenshot something and say, "Look what I drew."
Right.
I have
so
this
this
picture.
is confirming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And your phone, people have already been trying to implement this. If you have an iPhone, if you go to your photos right now and hit the info button, it'll literally tell you metadata information about it. It was taken, it was screenshotted, or it was taken on this day and this time. Your phones and your technology is already trying to self-police this, to try to validate authenticity of creation. So if I upload a picture and be like, "Oh, look at this thing that I built," someone's like, "You snapshotted someone else's Google picture." Some of that stuff's already happening. This just seems to be the most bulletproof way to confirm authenticity.
Yeah.
The problem with it is that we'll get into more of that in a second. But the problem is there value in even having an authentic image that anybody can have access to, or a video or a screenshot of it?
Don't go too far in that, because that's going to be one of my points that goes,
okay,
this is
why it's dumb. Okay. All right. So that being said, I want to start with a question. In our lifetime, we just said this before the podcast started, we've seen pretty much every wave of technology. It's all happened since we've been alive. We're a part of that generation. Of all of those iterations, whether it be the personal laptop, an iPod, an iPhone, what has been your favorite electronic invention in your lifetime so far?
Yeah, so my answer is complex, I think, because in some way, or in the obvious way, it's the phone. So for me, I've been an iPhone user for a long time. It's the phone because of all that it brings. Yeah. So I remember when I bought my first really nice digital camera. So it was a Sony. I am an early adopter of technology, so I bought this camera. I mean, I want to say I paid $1,000 for it.
Yeah. One time I saw you go through you talk about being an early adapter of technology. I saw you go through your desk once of all these old bits of gadgets and gear. I
still got a bunch of it. Yeah,
blew my mind. I was like, oh, you were on the cutting edge. You were on the first wave of stuff.
My dad was that way.
Sure.
And so it was something I liked technology. So I had a Palm Pilot, then I had the newer Palm Pilot, and then. So I've always loved technology. So I had the digital camera.
Did you have a pager in high school?
I did have a pager in high school.
And
people thought I was a drug dealer, right? I mean, that was it. So that was before cell phones.
Sure.
So so I had me and my friend Chuck had pagers because I found it was so frustrating, all of us trying to connect to each other. And so it was basically, I mean, this generation won't even understand this, but you had to call someone's house, leave a message that maybe they would get or not get if they went to that house. There was no way of getting a hold of people. So at our school, we had a cell phone. Oddly enough, I still remember the number. But we had a a payphone. So even then, people are like, payphone, what's that? Sure. We had a payphone in the lobby of our, by the gym. And so you were basically trying to get a hold of people one way. So all that said is I got a pager. My friend Chuck got a pager. And then everyone initially was like, oh, it's stupid. I mean, even my siblings and stuff, what are you, a drug dealer? And then, sure enough, other people started getting pagers, a bunch of other people, because they're
Can you explain the drug dealer thing to me? Is it just that only a drug dealer would need to be constantly contacted?
Because people would page a drug dealer, and that's actually a lot of people thought that was a technology. It was either in the business world or medical professionals, a doctor would have a pager.
Sure.
And so for me, it was, and you would just page. And some people were like, "What's a pager?" So literally, someone would call the number of my pager. When it beeped, you would type in a number. That number would be sent to my pager, and then I would call that number that you're at. We could connect. Yeah. So my parents ended up loving it because they could get a hold of me anytime, my friends and all that. So all this, I had a pager. I had a cell phone I carried and purchased way faster than everybody else. So I was a sophomore in college. So this would have been 98, I think. And it had just become affordable. So they were a thing, but they were expensive. They were bigger.
The big car phones. And,
And so my first phone was a legit flip phone. So I've loved technology in all different ways. I loved video games and stuff when I was younger. I don't play them anymore, but when I was younger and stuff. I love the phone because of all of what it provides. It has one of the best cameras you can actually buy now is on your phone. I love GPS. I love the text feature, call feature, different things. At the same time, it's probably the thing I resent the most is my phone because it's changed me. It's changed us, how we think and stuff. Even today, I'm driving back. I had to go out for just a moment. I got some lunch. As I'm driving back, literally every single time traffic stopped, I was without even thinking,
right to it. Yeah.
And I just was I hate that this is my rhythm versus just being calm in the moment. So I love the technology. I hate it at the same time. It creates that tension in me that and even how it's impacting our culture. I'm frustrated with it. So all that said, too, there was one cell phone that my wife and I once had that we still to this day agree it was our favorite phone ever. And I'm not joking. I'm really serious. If I could get it again, there's a possibility I would, just to disconnect from it. And it was a phone that it was a flip phone that opened this way, but then when you shut it, you could open it sideways, and it had a full keyboard, and you could text that way.
Gina had the same phone, and I thought it was rad.
Oh,
I think it's
it was
called
so
an Envy
cool.
or something like that, but
Maybe.
it was super. It could open either way. Super cool.
And we loved it. It was small, thin, and you could text still, call.
Remember texting with T9?
Yeah.
That was the cool move when I was in
Yeah.
high school, to have your
From
phone
your
in your
pocket.
pocket, trying to text in class and trying to figure out your T9 thing.
Yeah.
There's some people who have no idea what we're talking about.
I know. So T9 was basically like it was almost like a code in a sense.
Yeah.
You could type some letters and it would like auto finish the
Yeah,
words,
it would
right?
guess. It would guess of the combination of numbers. It's super weird.
Yeah.
It would guess from the combination of numbers that you just hit what word you're probably trying to say.
Yeah.
So it was hit or miss, do it in your pocket because it could guess the wrong word.
How would you would have to read it though, right? Like
Before
if
you
they
sent it, or you just
No,
really
I mean if they
trusting-
text you back, there's no.
You'd have to read it,
Yeah,
yeah.
you'd have to read it.
There was this thing when I was in high school where you could text cha-cha, so 242-242, and it was just Google in text form. So I'd go in here. So if I didn't know an answer for a test, you could legitimately go text 242-242, what is this word in Spanish? And it'll text you back. It's literally people paid to answer questions, and they just like send you back answers. Isn't that crazy?
That is it still a thing, or is that?
I'm
9
sure
more?
it's not.
9 more. That
This
is
like
crazy.
15 years ago. I don't know. It could be still be a thing.
Can
but
you imagine? I don't even know how today.
This is before smartphones. You couldn't just. There's no browser on your phone. This is.
But how are teachers stopping people from cheating today?
I have no idea.
You can't. Like
No.
even
Unless
when a
you're-
lot of them have like Chromebooks and stuff. But like I mean, like even with the ability to have like an iPod or a AirPod in your ear, if you have your hair can cover it, you would never know. I mean,
No. Which is
talking.
funny with that. So, AirPods didn't exist yet. My friend Corey showed me how to essentially break like over ear headphones and just have the wire pulled out and use the thing and put it through his sleeve of his shirt so he could lean on his, I'll do this for the camera. He'd lean on his hand in class and just like pretend like he was listening. He was listening to music through this. This is like real jank stuff just to try to break the rules in school. But it's just funny to see now kids like AirPods, that's it. Cover it with your hair, you're good to go.
Yeah.
For me, I think so. When I grew up, when I was in junior high, YouTube like was it came out. It was like, oh, this is the craziest. Anybody could upload anything. You could listen to any song. So this is before streaming. So like, if you wanted to download a song, you usually had to do it illegally or buy it. And when you're a broke teenager, it's way easier to try to.
Sure.
You'd go to LimeWire or something like that,
Wow.
which is you could get anything. You could download viruses on accident. It was so dangerous.
Oh yeah, it was like hit or miss. Like
super
when you
hit or
went
miss,
when you went to
yeah.
open the file.
It could be anything.
Could be anything.
You're
so you're
hoping
like-
it's this song, or it could be a bootleg version of it.
Yeah.
But YouTube was just basically what it made it so revolutionary is it could just host so much data.
Yeah.
It was massive. You could put any video. I think initially you could only do 10-minute videos. But I remember how crazy that was, and this was also the time where kids were like filming themselves. Immediately, as soon as YouTube came out, it was paired with kids filming themselves doing dumb stuff.
Right. Yeah.
That was my dream.
Yeah.
And so I remember getting my first like digital camera. So like that actually did video. It was like $100. I was through the roof. Like I said, cell phones are barely, around at this point. Like I didn't have one, but I had this little digital camera where I could just take out the SD card, put it in my computer, because we're just moving from floppy disk at this point.
Right.
Put the SD in your computer and put it on YouTube. And the amount of trouble I got into that thing. Just
Sure.
me and my friends just jumping off stuff and trying to do flips and like.
Maybe the worst thing ever is giving kids a camera.
Oh, the worst.
Because you're never going to try to record something ordinary.
No.
So you're always
No.
trying to do extraordinary.
Or something that would help your community. It's
Right,
always going
yeah,
to be
no,
something
yeah.
ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
something,
So
whatever.
YouTube is a perfect example of what I said earlier. Technology that comes out that initially is absurd and then becomes more practical. Because like YouTube, for me, who's a little bit older than you and like in a different generation, YouTube was absurd for a minute.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was a lot of cuckoo-ness, craziness. Like there was so much of the nonsense, finding anything nice or like something that you would find value in was difficult to where now, one, with the artificial intelligence of, all the different algorithms, now YouTube is something like I enjoy being on YouTube.
Yeah.
And there was a stretch where I would have said, not only did I not enjoy it, I actually thought maybe it was kind of dangerous because you could watch all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, all the different documentaries,
Oh my
information,
goodness.
sports
Such
stuff.
well-produced things get
Yeah.
put on YouTube.
Yeah, and even like clips. So like an hour-long sports show, like of a guy that I like to listen to, they'll break those down into 5 minutes, 10-minute segments, and then give the title of it. Because I don't want to watch if they talk about a sports team that I don't care about. Then I don't care about it.
Yeah.
But then like they'll go like they're talking about Michigan football or something like that. It's a 7-minute clip, and so I can just click on it. And now the algorithm's so crazy that it knows what I want, and you get on there and it's like, Well, there's 10 videos I'd love to watch.
That's a whole nother conversation to have at some point, like how sophisticated algorithms are and how it knows exactly what you want to see, and just it keeps you in that click cycle.
Let me tell you something crazy. All right, so my friend Aaron, he doesn't even know this, but he's a pastor in Columbus. But he posted a picture on Facebook, and for some reason, when Facebook loaded on my computer, my laptop today, it glitched and the picture did not load. But above it, or like on the top of the picture, it said, most likely a picture of 7 people and a door.
Get out of here.
No, that's what it said.
Facebook trying to describe you the picture because it didn't load?
But I think somehow Facebook, it was just the code on it, and I went,
wow.
What? And I clicked on those actual words. It caused it to enlarge and therefore reload. And when it popped up, it was 7 people and a giant like barn doors. Isn't that crazy that because someone didn't look at the picture and type that,
right?
That's some artificial intelligence processed the picture.
Yeah, has it's artificial intelligence essentially absorbs so much information from the internet and then makes estimates of like this is, and mind you, this is a computer doing this. That's what makes it crazy. Your phone does this cool thing. It's cool until it's kind of terrifying, where it can read people's faces, and the more that you upload of that person's face. So my phone, I've had an iPhone since I've had kids. Yeah. So my phone knows what my kids have looked like at every stage. Mm-hmm. So about once every 3 months, it'll send me like a batch of pictures. Are these Selah? Because you know what I mean?
Oh, that's so weird.
Yeah. And in some ways, it's nice because if I want to find a picture, I can pick on there. So that's where they get you, is the convenience of like, oh, how cool that I don't have to make.
Yeah, my kids ask me, can you send me a picture of mom? Because I want to make a post on social media, and I go to that, click her face,
and there's all these pictures.
All the pictures, yeah.
So, but it's been doing it long enough that I'm like, Selah doesn't look anything now like she did when she was a month old, but it knows it. And I'm like, it's so crazy to think about.
So a funny story with that, my kids, when they were younger and Facebook, when it was first developing that technology, all my kids, I kept trying to label them as Mary because they looked so much like her. And it was funny, like how many of them, they're like, it would automatically do it. Mary Johnson's in this picture, and I'm like, no, that's actually our,
that's super funny.
Cole, or that's actually Titus. But
have you seen in your iPhone 2 in your Photos app that you can Google, or not Google, you can use the search bar to look up. If you type in chair, it'll give you every picture that you have in your photo album of a chair.
No,
I'm being so serious. You can do it. It's wild. If you haven't done it, do it on your phone right now. It'll blow your mind. So
that's crazy.
If I want to post a picture for like for Tree.Church music or something, I'll just type in stage or guitar, and every picture that I've ever taken for the last like 10 years that it's connected to my iCloud that has a guitar in it will pop up, and I can sort through them and look for stuff.
That's crazy.
Crazy. So it's so sophisticated. It's taking badly taken pictures.
Here's the good of it is we talked about this on the last podcast. I really do monitor my kids' stuff, and one of the features when I was just setting up recently, it says, do you want us to turn this feature on that if someone sends an inappropriate picture to your kids, it will block it?
Wow.
So it's reading a picture and determining if it's inappropriate.
That's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Horrifying, but it is cool. It's horrifying that it's that sophisticated that it can, but that's a great feature.
But that's what I'm saying. There's like a craziness to technology. Yeah. There's a good to technology. And it really, I think this is going to be our discussion today.
I think that's the conversation.
That line.
Yeah. So it's so much of this has made our life better and easier and more efficient. Like I said, the idea of just being able to search a picture of a guitar, but it comes with consequences, like all things that are more efficient, you know? Yeah. So that being said, talking about the positive, that's actually the first question I wanted to say. When thinking about the metaverse, when thinking about this new digital world where you have these NFT style artwork, cryptocurrency, this unique money that's in this space, and then you can have your own home and you're in. I have a couple things written down, but I wanted to give you a shot at it first. Can you think of any positives? Like, why would this make our life better? Yeah.
Oh yeah, a ton.
Okay.
I really can. The negative, I have a ton for that too.
Sure.
And I think that's the tension of trying to figure out both. I think the coolest part of technology is when it's utilized well, it's going to help the underprivileged people and communities in the world.
Totally.
Can we agree on that? Okay,
yeah, that's the first thing I've written down. Yeah.
Okay, so that's one of my points. So I'll get to that in a second. But I think the idea of being able to connect is never something we should resent. Is there better ways to connect? Yes. Are there healthier ways to connect? Sure. But connection can be a really good thing. So I think in some sense, allowing people that can now connect in an environment where maybe they never would. So like, I think about a lot of people that don't understand other cultures can become racist of those cultures, or just, there's a racial ignorance of it.
Yeah.
Well, think about if you can get exposed to other cultures and how that might change perspectives of future generations.
Think about that video you sent me last night of those two people. They have to be African or something like that.
Right, because their accent.
Because their accent. But like the fact that you and I...
It was a worship video for
so Pastor Matthew sent me this video that he saw of these two people. And it was funny because I almost sent it to you that morning too. I just forgot, but these two people from, assuming Africa according to their accent, that's what I would guess, leading like one of the most powerful worship sets. And what made it powerful is, first of all, they're very good musicians. Like they sing, they're singing so beautifully. But it was so like guttural is the word I would use. It was so passionate. And it's cool that like, you want to talk about the benefit of technology. I would have never been exposed to that. I would have never seen these people who are from a different socioeconomic environment than I'm in, a different culture, probably have a different primary language, to see their worship like that. Right. So cool.
Yeah. So like in my life, I've had the privilege of going on multiple missions trips to different cultures, and not every single one that I've been to, I have fallen in love with that culture.
That's awesome.
Like I've gone to Jamaica a handful of times just when I was younger. Love the Jamaican culture because I was exposed to it. I love the Mexican culture. We've done 6, 7 missions trips maybe to Mexico throughout the years, and I can name other places. And I think if people get exposed and have the ability to connect with people from around the world, I honestly don't think there's going to be a huge negative to that in the sense of being exposed to them, to some degree putting a face to a name. Now I realize it's digital, but I mean like some type of connection point.
Makes us more empathetic probably.
100%.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So like, and I love that. So the distance is going to be better, like that we can reach out and connect. Yeah. I think it's going to be deeper. So like one of the things I don't like about social media and those connections, like friends on Facebook and, like people following you on Instagram and things like that, is to some degree it's the illusion of connection because it's so superficial to some degree where like, I'm not saying you're not connected, but now like we talked about last time,
listen to last week.
It's turned into branding and stuff. Yeah. So it's content. It's content consumption of other people. Wow. And I don't think that's great. I don't think that's great connections. Potentially in this virtual reality world that we're talking about, in the metaverse. So again, I want to explain this because I do have a fear that we're talking from a level that we understand.
We've already researched it.
We're talking about people will put on goggles and be able to see an alternate reality, a virtual reality. So they'll be able to connect there, and it will be just like the real world in the sense of like, you have to go places, go distances, and different things.
Yeah, the one video that Mark Zuckerberg put out, he literally went to this cool spaceship-looking thing with his friends, and they're playing cards and hanging out, and that's the way they hung out that night. Yeah. So it might sound silly to you, but that's why it might be silly, but it's happening. So that's where it's So that's very real. It
is crazy, the technology. Yeah. So my kids, because I'm an early adopter of technology, I also, and my love language is gift giving. My kids basically like have a lot of cool things, and we put parameters around them so they're not playing video games, 9 hours a day. But with the virtual reality, I just heard them talk about it enough, and it honestly was affordable enough. Like it, I think when the technology first came out, it wasn't. I want to say it was like $1,000 or a couple $1,000.
Yeah, my friend Tyler had the first run, and it was just because he's wealthy. It's insane. It had so much money, and now like all things with technology, you can think of like a big screen TV. Right. Things get cheaper. They get better, making it way more. And
it was actually cheaper than video game systems. So I got them the headsets. The headset has like a hand controller thing on there. So they're playing it. They love it, and they're like, "Dad, you got to try it out." And I was like, "Okay." And I was honestly in my mind picturing like Nintendo, the original Nintendo, but now you have a screen. Yeah. And I put it on, and I was in some tropical location for this thing, and it unnerved me. I went, oh, and then everywhere you look, it'd be like me right now, looking around this room. Okay, I see a wall. I see another, like, and everything was still. So, like, it was literally adapting, and I was like, this is crazy. So my kids play golf. They can go to, like, an 18-hole course, and it just feels and looks so real. So it really is crazy. Yeah. So again, going back to your question though, the positives is I think in that has the potential for better connections. So it might still be in the digital world. So I think what social media gives is an opportunity for people maybe that are more shy, wouldn't be as outgoing. They can be more outgoing in social media and that type of connection. But again, I think it's not the depth of connection that people need. Sure. This potentially can take them to the next level. Yeah. Again, not to the ultimate of face-to-face, but it can take them to the next level. I have a few other things too. But
no, for me, a big thing for me is equal access to people is really helpful. Yeah. So there's a book I read a long time ago called Ready Player One. I think I recommended it to you recently.
Book, I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to.
It's super interesting. But the whole thing is basically the metaverse, 10 years. It was, predicting the metaverse. Right. Where this kid would wake up and he'd put on his goggles and that's how he went to school. That's how he worked. That's how he did everything. Mm-hmm. And what was cool is in the book is actually based in Columbus. He's in this poverty-stricken trailer in Columbus, but in the game he's really successful. Yeah. And that's where all of a sudden
I've seen the movie.
Okay, gotcha. So, but the whole social economy had shifted to where like what's valuable in the game is more valuable in real life. Mm-hmm. So you can be poverty-stricken in real life because the new real world is actual virtual reality. So that comes with some scary stuff that we'll talk about here soon. Positives are equal access to education. So right now,
that's a big one for me.
Huge. So right now, like the way our education system is set up via a public school, is that it's funded by your property taxes, which is cool until you don't have wealthy people in your community paying high-end property taxes. So your schools get underfunded. So the idea of anybody having access to high-end education online is really cool. Equal access to banking. So that might sound like not a big deal, but that's like a real problem around the world where if you don't have someone to validify that you have money or to validate that, it becomes really hard to make purchasing. So the idea of using cryptocurrency gets rid of all of that. The community does it for you. It essentially puts the power back in the hand of the consumer, which I'm like always a fan of that.
Sure.
And it also helps people who are poverty stricken potentially create wealth. It's like a lot of opportunity for you're going to have kids that are learning how to design stuff that can literally sell they'll sell it as NFT, but hey, you want to play this video game? I made a sword for that video game that this is the only one. I made it. I designed it, and they'll sell it for a high price.
Right. And their prices we're talking life change type money. So like in America, to some degree, we've lost sight of our value of currency in comparison. So like, you know, we have $1 and it's like, oh, $1. I remember this one pastor one time was talking about how like 70% of the world, don't quote me on these statistics, but I think it's around there. 70% of the world still lived on like $2 a day. So he had $2 in his hand, like 2 singles. He crumbled them up and like tossed them in the crowd. And he said like people in the crowd were like, don't touch me with that dirty money. You know, like to us it's nothing. But if they were to throw out multiple hundreds of dollars, the crowd would respond differently because that's a day's wage for us.
That's super
so
interesting.
A person like that makes a sword, designs it, sells it for $5, $10, $100.
Yeah.
And that's like
really meaningful
months.
All of a sudden.
Yeah, months of like eating.
Yeah.
And another cool thing about it too is like in the digital world, it's removing many times the middleman. So like you're saying, like either corruption or whatever, but it's just removing anyone that's going to take a piece of it.
Yeah.
I remember when we conquered Iraq in the last war. I don't know if that's the proper terms to use, but we did. Yeah. But in that, I remember I read an article. Again, don't quote me exactly on this, but I'm almost positive. It said like within 1 week, all cell phone towers were up. And it was like the same thing for like Afghanistan or all cell phone technology, because they brought in these portable systems that allowed cell phones to be used and distributed, because that was so much easier than running actual cables.
Wow.
So the infrastructure was destroyed in the war, but cell phones were up and running, which means the internet was up and running, which gives people access to information, you know, and digital currency and different things. Yeah. And so, we could, like, if you have a school, whether it be in one of our cities in America or in an impoverished nation, that it just doesn't have proper teachers. Now, potentially with virtual reality, you could have a teacher who's excellent in a completely different state, city, country, educate them. Incredible. And I'm imagining the technology will even advance to the place where it's not even just an individual headset, where there'll be units in a ceiling that can project onto a wall and allow kids to have that
even
space.
more immersion into that. And yeah, absolutely. And I'm such an advocate. You know, everyone just has those really intense passion points. For me, one of them, I love the idea of people who either come from generational poverty or weren't dealt the best hand, that come from, you know, generational dysfunction, having opportunity, and then especially when they utilize it. That's like my favorite. Those are my favorite stories to read about it. This person who, you know, and anything we can do in a systems way, my default is always to celebrate those wins. You know what I mean? So that being said, that's a lot of the good of this. Of like, wow, this could really be revolutionary for some people.
I have a couple more.
Sure, yeah, you got it.
One is I was just talking to a friend of mine last night. She goes to our church, Julie, and our kids are good friends and playing the same sports teams. And we were actually talking. Her car was parked next to mine because we were waiting to pick up our sons from soccer, and she commutes. And she was talking about how I said, "Do you like it?" She says, "Oh, I love it." And she was talking about just all the benefits of it. So for her, she works for a law firm. For her, it's the ability to get all her work done, basically in a distraction-free environment to some degree, while still accomplishing other things. So like her mom lives with her, and so she can help her mom. Her husband can come home for lunch, and they can have lunch. She can throw a load of laundry in. These are things she actually said. And I was thinking about it, like in every single day for like you and I, there's lost time throughout the day. It's just that the brain breaks is how I've heard it word. Like we can't work 8 hours straight. You have to stop and have a 15-minute conversation, you know, do something. That's just a normal part of how our brains work. So for the person that's commuting, those can now be applied towards something actually valuable to themselves, you know, to their home life or whatever.
That's super good.
You also remove like commute. So like for someone like her that works in Columbus, you're basically giving back an hour and a half of your day, finding parking, paying for parking, all those stuff. So like there's monetary value, there's time value, there's functionality value. Yeah. Think about that even when we look at the concept of remote working. This could actually allow people to experience that, but then potentially add back some of the things that are missing from remote working in more relational connection.
Yeah.
So if right now, if you're going to relationally connect, basically it's Zoom. It's phone, text, or Zoom. Mm-hmm. We would say Zoom is the best, and yet aren't we all kind of sick of Zoom?
Yeah,
it's like kind of weird. But can you imagine if like you're at your house, I'm at my house, but every once in a while I pop on a headset.
And we're in the office.
We're in the office together. Yeah. And so we have a meeting now where we can talk and laugh. Again, the technology will get to the place where we'll be able to see expressions and see their face.
You know something crazy? I experienced the craziest thing. I went to a friend's house in Akron. That's where I'm from. I went to go see an old high school friend, and he's got a set of these goggles, or somebody brought it to someone's birthday party. We're all trying it out. And we're fighting people and fighting dragons and doing all the cool stuff. And he's just like, you know what's even more impressive than the video game aspect? And he had me put these on, and he essentially like had me go into a movie theater with a bunch of strangers who were all watching the same movie at the same time.
Yeah.
Wild. So I have a screen in front of my face, an inch from my face. I don't need to watch a screen within watching a screen. The better viewing thing would be like, obviously as close as possible. Yeah. But there were like 100 people there, and their little characters are sitting in the auditorium, and everyone's sitting and just like watching this thing together. And it felt weirdly communal. Like I felt like we're all having a shared experience of watching. It was like some 90s movie, whatever it was, a shared experience. And that's where it hit me the first time that like an office space might be useful, where it does kind of break down the walls of Zoom, where it's like everyone has to do the annoying mute, unmute.
Right.
Like that's not how conversations work in real life, where there's a lot of people talking back and forth. That all kind of goes away with Zoom. Yeah. It felt a little more organic. I thought that was pretty cool. It was weird, but it was cool.
I'm imagining at some point we're going to talk about the church, right? I mean, in this podcast. Okay, so remind me if I forget to address that.
Okay.
Because I think that is one of the potential. I'll say it now, then we'll apply it to the church later.
Okay.
To some people, they would look at that and go, that's stupid, right? I would rather just go to my living room, TV room, basement with my family and watch it on a big screen TV.
Yeah.
To the person who is a little bit more shy, reserved, introvert, to them, that is an experience that they get that they otherwise wouldn't. So they go into a movie theater and they do feel community. And so like it's easy to look at that and make fun of it, but I think, no, that's added value to that person with potential connection points that can add value to their life. We can all debate and argue which one is better, which one, some would even want to argue scripturally, which one's godly and not. But I would go, just everyone pause for a second. Is this adding value to someone? Then let's celebrate that while also thinking, how can we utilize this in a way to even make it better? So like when we talk about the church, that's what I'm going to say, like, that would be somewhat of my perspective is let's not just say no. Let's just take a step back and go, but what if? What if we can utilize this in a way that adds value to people's lives and draws them toward Christ? Yeah. So just remind me if I don't come back to that.
That totally makes sense. All right. Those are some of the wins. What do you see as some of the potential problems of this?
I mean, I think the obvious is an impact. It's an artificial relationship. And so if you don't have, okay, I want to be careful. Artificial relationship, I want to say that not in that the relationship's not real. It's not at the level that I think obviously we were designed for. So we were designed in a world
That's a good way to say
that there was no digital.
Yeah.
So we were designed to have face-to-face. There is value in face-to-face. So we've seen the negative on social media that people say way harsher things, way more aggressive things in the digital world that they would almost never say face-to-face. I could give you an example of 3 or 4 people that I know on Facebook that are ultra aggressive on Facebook. And this, I'm not saying this to be a jerk. Face-to-face, they're wimps. You know what I'm saying? Like face-to-face, they're not raising their voice. They're not using that phraseology. They're like, oh, you'd almost be like, how are you two the same people? Yeah. I'm looking at you here. I'm seeing you face-to-face. I'm afraid that to some degree, it's going to change people's how they communicate. So I think one of the negatives is you might, in some degree, see a more aggressive posture of people because if I don't like it, I power down.
There's also no threat of violence, which I know that might sound like really silly, but that like matters. If you're talking to somebody and you all of a sudden know if I like either one, I'm in a room with you. I can't power down. Like if I say something, you can hit me or you can just make me uncomfortable. Yeah. You can get awkward. There's no out from like a real life situation outside of literally just running. Peace out. I heard a really interesting, I heard somebody talking about online bullying and why this is so problematic and why that was so prevalent with kids. Because if I'm a kid and if I'm being mean, I don't know that. Take this super lightly. I don't know that much about kids or like child psychology. I know nothing about it. But I have to think if I'm a kid and if I'm being mean, it's probably because I'm just trying it out. Like kids are experimenting with things,
sure,
like
right?
They're just trying being mean. You know,
totally
they heard someone be mean, they're trying it out. And then all of a sudden, if I'm a kid and I look at another kid and I'm just like, you're fat, and then their face like scrunches up and they cry, it probably makes me feel bad because we have empathy inside. It's like, oh, it doesn't feel good to hurt someone's feelings. Now, obviously, there are outlets. Some kids do like that, and that's like a whole. I don't know about it, but usually that's face to face makes you feel empathetic, and that's why a lot of those people, big talk behind a keyboard.
For sure,
the moment I have to look at you in the eyes, I get a little more shaky. I'm not going to talk as aggressively.
Sure. Yeah.
And the problem is with kids in online bullying is they'll say something hateful. They'll type, "Hey, you're fat," and then just nothing. Yeah, they don't have to see their face. They don't have to see them cry. They don't have to see the impact of what their words actually did.
And
they never learn that lesson.
Right. And most people's response don't even acknowledge it. They come back with aggression. They might literally be crying and hurt their feelings, but they're coming back with like, I don't care about what you say.
Totally.
So it's actually training them to go like, oh, that didn't really hurt them at all.
Which when you can hear the pain in someone's voice and see it in their eyes, that
100%.
does something to you.
Yeah.
That does something to a human being. It makes us more empathetic.
Have you ever seen the Key and Peele sketch where it's intelligent bullies? Where the one comes out and he's like they keep speaking in the literal, so he's like, I'm picking on you right now because my dad never approved of me.
Yeah.
And like you watch it, I mean, it really is spot on.
I feel small about myself now.
Yeah. And his dad comes and picks him up and he says like the same thing. He's like, I'm mad at my kid because my dad didn't love me either, or something like that, you know. And you're like,
totally.
Okay, it's like real literal, but
I have to think that the less we are connected with real world people, the harder it's going to be to develop some of that empathy and to actually like care for each other and really communicate. I also think just on like, you said something that kind of hit home for me is like, it's not how we were designed. So here's my first thought when you said that was, well, if God knew the ending was that part of the design that we would eventually get such a technological place, then here's where I immediately was like, no, I don't think so. Because while he does know the ending, I still don't think it's the design, because God designed us with like 5 senses.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how good virtual reality will get, to my knowledge. Maybe there are people super into the metaverse and knows what the future is. They might disagree with me. I can't imagine anything that maximizes all 5 of your senses, like seeing you, hearing you, touching you, smelling you, like those memories where you're with your friends and you're outside and it's like, it's fall time here in Ohio, at least we're getting close to it. And I'm looking forward to sitting around a fire with my friends. I'm looking forward to sitting down and having conversations and smelling a bonfire and experiencing all that.
Right.
I think that's how God designed us to experience stuff.
And that would be my fear, to miss out on those.
Yeah. I heard Elon Musk talk, this is scary. I heard Elon Musk talk about this, where he said, with some of the inventions coming up, we'll talk about Neuralink here in a second, here in a few minutes, but he said that you can download and upload information faster than you can talk. So talking will be obsolete. And that was the scariest thing I've ever heard in my life. I was like, no
that dude's
way.
either a genius or a mad scientist. Like,
Maybe he's a little bit of both. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he said that, and the person who was interviewing him said, so like, will people even still talk anymore? He goes like, yeah, like you still sit around a fire when you have like a furnace in your house. It's like, it's nostalgic.
Nostalgic. Talking's nostalgic now.
Just having a conversation, people will like be comforted by it, like the way we are, like, which is the weirdest, craziest thought of just being so disconnected from the design that you would do it for entertainment purposes, not even for functionality anymore.
My biggest fear though is we will lose a big piece of what makes us human. You know, so like, so when I say the design, I do realize that even in the design, there are things that are totally normal now that you would say was a part of the design. I mean, so talking on the phone, obviously, you know, FaceTime, all those different things, texting, none of that's part of the design. Actually, part of the initial design would not have even been the distance that we live from people. You know, like they were way closer in community. So I get that technology to some degree isn't the design, but you know, we've adapted to it. But I do think like one of the things that we've seen is, I've already mentioned this, social media has changed how we communicate. But I think even during COVID, we saw how that impacted, those 2 years impacted high schoolers and how they think and how they act. We're seeing the impact of those 2 years with the quiet quitting, which can be a good thing. I'm not saying that's all bad, but where people got comfortable not coming to church, and so they never came back to church. And they would even say they're mad or upset. They would even say that they have left the church. They just are watching online. And so like people are becoming more and more comfortable withdrawing. And I think that's the fear of it, is that they're going to miss out on the necessity of being face-to-face. Because the other part about it too is like, when you're face-to-face and you can see someone's body language, you can tell what they're really going through. So like I say this to our volunteers, I say it to our staff, I said it to the youth ministry as I was leading them on Sunday night. Before we went out, I had all the leaders together, all the student leaders together. I said, here's what I want you guys to do. Look at people's body language and figure out who needs a friend tonight, the kid who looks confused, the kid who's sitting by themselves. And I even, in my message to them, when I was talking about finding that one kid that you can reach out to and love, I was like, read their body language. So all that said, in the digital world, you can create any image you want. And so hurting people might not reveal that they're hurting. Other people might not see people that need their love. And so I do think there's that piece that could be missing that I'm afraid of.
And I'd say that piece of us is a really big chunk of our humanity.
For sure.
Like God equipped us really well to do what you just said, to like look at people and see their body language. Like I know when I walk into my house the mood that my wife's in. I know within 1 second. The second I look at her, I know how awful were my kids today. Like how stressful were they? Was it a great day? Was it a tough day? What did she need from me? Like, is it one of those days where I'll walk in and be like, how about you go back to your room and just like, just hang out? And I'll give the kids dinner. I'm gonna, you need, whatever today was, like, just take a break from it. Versus I know when that's not needed. You can't do that if you're essentially putting on such a really great consistent front and such a facade that the metaverse will just make it so much easier to pretend like everything's fine all the time.
Right.
And that really does scare me. And that's even like my next question is like, okay, how does all this stuff compared to the technology we have now today? So now it's easy to poke at the bad aspects of what we have. So social media, like the running joke of it, is we're the most connected, disconnected generation ever. Like we have the illusion of connectivity because I have Instagram and I have Be Real and I have Facebook and I've got TikTok where my friends are making funny videos. I feel more connected than ever, but it's an illusion because nobody actually knows that I might not be doing well, or that I'm having panic attacks, or that I'm depressed, or that no one's actually checking in on me. I'm not in proximity to anybody, or I'm just only presenting a fake version of myself, which is harder to do with the volume of time in person. I heard a guy actually talk about that with accountability, where he talked about I won't say the name of it, but like an accountability system in the 90s for men where they would get together and they'd talk about, pornography and lust, and it would be like an accountability network. It was largely done within churches. And I heard a guy on a podcast say the idea of a bunch of guys getting together for a pancake breakfast and talking about their feelings is not realistic. Like that's not really how guys operate usually. What's more realistic is when you're spending a high volume of time with somebody, you can tell when they're off.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I know if I see my friend yelling at his kid more than he usually does, I'm like, you okay? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you see your friend checking out a waitress, it's like, hey, I'm here. Like I know something's up. What's going on? How's your head? How's your heart? How are you doing? That stuff has to happen within proximity. So this idea, this illusion of social media of only presenting this good stuff takes away that. We also know Google's kind of terrifying. Like the way people harvest our data, and so far it's generally leveraged for, like, in quotations, good, like better ads, more tailored experience.
There's a lot of danger to that.
There's a ton of danger to it. So I guess my question is, compared to what we have now, is more integration to it? We already kind of have this symbiotic relationship with our phone. Is more integration going to fix those things or make them worse? That to me is kind of a scary question because I don't know,
So my answer to that, this is just my opinion. We oftentimes say, like, we're not specialists on any of this stuff.
Yeah.
My opinion is the healthy will potentially stay healthy, and the unhealthy will get unhealthier.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what I mean by that. We know the people who have, to some degree, have like addictive personalities and maybe are addicted to video games or social media, to the branding, like all of that. I think this is just going to push them deeper. So that was actually one of my negatives is I think we'll see addiction in this alternate reality go higher, or people who like, they just become obsessed with it. Yeah. And then I think people that are healthy will find a way to utilize it in a healthy way, hopefully. But I think that's the key is they have to have outside of it, the metaverse and the digital reality world, they have to have elements that keep them healthy, which I would say is personal connection, is physically going to church, is connecting relationally. You know what I mean? Like, and I think if we start to substitute too many of the human interactions, you're going to see this become really unhealthy really quickly, and it's going to change, I think, the feel of culture. And what will be interesting is it's going to do it to the nations that are more well off quicker, and so it will be a weird dynamic. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to see the culture in America, which is already kind of radically different than most of the nations of the world. Like some of the more developed nations are so different from majority of the world. And I just think you're going to see like a bigger separation potentially that way. Yeah.
And I think the deeper we get into this world, this is actually where I kind of want to sell you on NFTs. So I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth because I think it's also problematic. But the deeper we get into that kind of integration, the harder it's going to be to tell what is real anymore. You know what I mean? And like, you know, did you see that Manti Te'o documentary about being catfished?
I didn't see that, but I know the story well.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this guy, this was like 10 years ago, so I feel like he just wasn't really savvy on what was, you know.
He wasn't. That's what they
kind of heartbreaking. Yeah. Where I saw so many people commenting. If you don't know this football player, he played for Notre Dame, basically got catfished. That means someone online pretended to be a woman and pretended to be his girlfriend, and he fell for it. And it was a guy. It wasn't even who they said they were, and it was really heartbreaking.
He never met them.
Never met them in person.
He genuinely fell in love with this person,
and they weren't even really the person that they said they were. Really devastating situation. And then they faked their death. It was this crazy thing. It really impacted him in a big way. My fear is that like that stuff just gets bigger and deeper. The ability for people to lie and pretend they're not who they are, to be able to put up this fakeness. So that's actually where NFTs come in. So the idea of an NFT is saying I have the original copy of this thing. Mm-hmm. So here's the best example. This is really my best sales pitch for it too, why there's like some validity to it. To be able to say, I saw the Mona Lisa in person. Like I went to the Louvre, wherever it is. You know, I don't know anything about art, but let's say I went to the place, wherever it is. Okay, nailed it. All right. So if I go look at the Mona Lisa, I've seen pictures of people looking at it, and it always is funny because it's rather small. Like the Mona Lisa,
it's shockingly small.
Yeah,
I've seen pictures too. Yeah, I agree.
Really funny. Yeah. Or in your head, I don't know why.
Yeah, in my head, it's like probably 3 feet by 3 feet, 4 feet. You know,
right? Because that's even probably the subconscious information. If it feels so culturally big, it must be. Yeah. It's really small, and just to watch people look at pictures of it. But I'll bet it's still special to say I saw. Yeah. You can Google a really high-res picture of the Mona Lisa. I saw the Mona Lisa. That is the point of NFTs. It's capitalizing on people's desire for social equity and saying, okay, so like the first viral video I remember watching was Charlie Bit My Finger. Do you remember that?
Yep.
It was huge. It was this huge video of this British kid talking about how his brother bit his finger. It was really funny. Imagine if we're in the metaverse and you walk into my home and there's just a screen right here on the wall, and if I turn it on, that video plays.
The original.
I said you've seen this video. This is the original file. Mm-hmm. This is the one off that guy's camera. Nobody else has it. Like it's an NFT. You can't fake it. That's what the non-fungible means. Like this is literally it. That is where you'll have people like this couch was designed by fill the blank or whoever's designing digital couches, and this like equity. For things to have value for humans, it has to be exclusive. It has to be like I paid a lot of money for this, and I know that this designer made it. I'm sure you've seen pictures of it. This is different. That is where it comes in of like trying to create more authenticity and saying, no, this is legitimate. This isn't just a picture of a picture, and here's the coding to do it.
Yeah. So let me tell you why that's stupid. Michael, of all the dumb things I've ever heard, that might be. No, I'm just kidding. No, I totally agree with what you're saying. So here's my tension with it. Okay. So the more I studied it, the more I went, okay, I get this a little bit. Like I understand some good of this. But what you just said is actually, this is what's funny. What you just said was literally going to be my example against
why it's bad.
Why it's bad. Okay.
Right, tell me.
So here's what I was saying. I was actually going to use Mona Lisa. Like I can show you in my notes. What does that say right there? Mona Lisa.
No, it does.
Okay. So Mona Lisa, I thought if you could take the Mona Lisa painting, so the one that Leonardo da Vinci did, that painting, I sure hope he's the one who painted that because
he is. Okay, I almost said DiCaprio. No, it's not.
Yeah, right. So that painting and have an exact copy, and I'm not talking about someone looked at it and copied it. I'm saying like
texture
we cloned it somehow. Yeah. It's the exact same.
Yeah.
And yet someone goes, "This is the original," and you go, "But I got the exact same."
Yeah.
The value is such a pretend thing in that moment of it's just because you gave it value. Yeah. Right?
Sure.
So like. And that's my issue is when we talk about in the digital world, we're talking about ones and zeros. I can have the exact copy of something and yet not have like the rights to it, but yet the exact same thing. And this is my issue is it's the made up world of value that is causing me to be concerned even in the physical world. So it's the idea because I have kids. I have young kids that they will go, "Dad, have you seen these Christian Dior Jordans that are $25,000? They're so cool."
That's a really good example. It's still a shoe.
It's still a shoe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so if you had that, would you wear it? Well, probably not because I could turn around and resell it. I'm like, to who? If you paid $25,000, then you got to find someone else that goes, well, to me, it's $26,000. And the thing is, you look at the shoe, and this is what I wonder, is if you didn't put any value on it and there was no celebrities endorsing or you're talking about it or sharing or whatever, and you just set that shoe on the table and bring a kid in and go, what is that to you? Would they even like it?
Yeah.
Right. So
Sure.
it's this made up world of value where the secondary market of things. So people are buying shoes and reselling and buying, and that's not unique to this generation, but it's with technology, it's accelerating. That's my fear is like with NFTs, there's a lot of them that are just kind of silly to me. So there's the one with the apes.
The Bape company, Bathing Ape, yeah.
So they're just producing pictures of apes, and because
that are AI made, nobody even makes them. Yeah, they're scrambled. They're
so
like
AI. This company now is so again. I want to explain this. This AI technology is creating pictures of apes, not good-looking pictures of apes, a cartoon ape doing different things. People are buying them. The company, in the last article I read, is now valued over $1 billion. It's
hilarious.
So at some point, this stops. At some point, someone goes, "Why are we buying pictures of apes?" And then everyone goes, "Yeah, it's not real."
Beanie Babies, right? You remember Beanie Baby in the 90s?
Perfect
Everyone
example.
was so convinced that this was like, these are going to be worth so much money one day. Then all of a sudden, you get to someday and nobody cares. It's just like, well, things are only worth money if there is a demand for these things.
Right.
And the second society deems that not valid, or like we actually don't care about that anymore, literally you could have spent $1 billion on it. It's worth zero.
There were people with Beanie Babies that were buying them in anticipation to pay for their kids' college. We'll resell them later, and then the value just went away. There's this devastating picture of this couple, husband and wife, that are in a courtroom. All the Beanie Babies are on the ground, and in their divorce, they're having to split them up. So they're literally each picking one at a time because to them, it was so valuable. They had invested so much money. Yeah. This is their future, and now it's worth nothing.
Really nothing. Yeah.
And so that's my fear. It's like it's pretend value. And the other part about it that's weird about NFTs, unless someone is going to change this legally, you're actually not buying the copyrights to it. So if I know that. Yeah, so if I buy this picture, I would imagine to some degree someone else can't make money off of it if I own it, but you don't own the copyright to it. It just proves that you're the creator of it.
So maybe the company still has it. So maybe like the Bathing Ape company, they'll sell you the file, but they might still own the copyright to it. So they can still monetize it if they want to.
And that's what they were saying about NFTs. This could potentially be good or bad. Like when I thought about it, I initially went to the negative. So Mark Cuban, who owns, so he's a famous billionaire, owns Dallas Mavericks. He said that they're thinking about going to NFTs for all tickets that they're issuing. But one of the things about it is, one of the things that might happen is if I sell you this ticket, okay, so I sell it to you, now you sell it to someone else, I can actually put within the contract that I get a portion of all future sales. So if I own it, I sell it to you, so I get 100% of that. You sell it to this person, I might get 10% of that value. So it keeps getting value back to me. So to me, I'm like, I can see some good with that if someone created this and they're saying like, if you're just using it to mark it up, like I'm going to keep benefiting. The negative of it is like Ticketmaster, which I think is like of the devil.
They are
like,
the worst.
They're the worst,
they are the
right?
worst company, with
all of their extra fees, that's a potential negative. But
oh man.
So NFTs though, I'm going over my notes. Yeah, so I said no copyright, fake value. But again, this is one of those things I was saying earlier. Where I pull back as I go, I think some of it is absurd. So some of the value we're sticking on some of the NFTs, the specific ones, I think is absurd. I think the technology, I can see the value of it. I can see, because like one article I read, and I loved it when the person worded it this way. They said the creator gets paid, the internet stays free, because this person creates it, the internet stays free, and we all get to enjoy it. So like the Charlie bit my finger thing. So whoever initially made it, they got paid for it. So good for them, right? They created this. It was a hit. It went viral. Awesome. They get paid for it. Internet's still free, so we're not charging people like you have to charge to see these things. So everyone gets the value, but this person in the middle gets some value of it because they own it. So for them, it is the person in the metaverse who puts it in their home. And there is value to them. And it is like to the person who buys art that goes, I'm not buying this as an investment to resell. I'm buying it because I love this paint. I love the painter, and I'm just proud to have this in my home. Like you can't take that away from someone.
Totally, that makes sense to me. I think it's just always wise. I guess this would be my last thought on it too. It's always wise to be mindful of what only has value when the community decides it has value. Because I can chase the red baseball cards, as an example.
Right, for sure.
So comic books, I experienced this one firsthand. I collected comic books as a kid. And then what happened when I was a kid, the 90s, like Marvel was broke. Now that's so hilarious to think of. Marvel is so wealthy, so much money because they got bought up by Disney and like all this stuff.
Disney as well.
Disney's wealthy, right? But even though the people who sold it to Disney made some money on it, like all this, it was great. Sure. At the time, though, Marvel had no money, so they just overprinted. So they just do one Spider-Man comic and do 10 versions of the covers, capitalizing on people being kind of dumb and knowing this is the variant in the blue, so it'll be a collectible. And now it means nothing.
Okay.
Like I've got a box full of those variant comics that like I bought over time, and like I see the yard sale, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be worth something. None of them worth anything. I've got a couple things that are worth something because I got lucky.
Yeah.
But other than that, companies are smart and they know how to leverage your interest. So now we see these kids with two things: baseball cards and Pokemon cards.
Pokemon, right?
They're opening these packs. They have YouTube channels dedicated to opening packs of like baseball and football cards and Pokemon cards. And that is like a reminder of like, hey, Jake Paul or Logan Paul, whatever the Paul, spent like $1 million on that Charizard thing. That's not forever.
No, it's not.
That's cool now. In 2 years, what's that going to be worth? So I would say anyway, whether it be an NFT or something like that, don't do the Beanie Baby. Don't fall into the Beanie Baby trap. It's not a valuable. It's gambling, right? Is it safe to say it's just gambling?
And I think again, I think we're agreeing on this in that it's absurd right now. So that's the part of it. And what what's fascinating to me? So this became big about 2 years ago. Okay, here's a crazy number. Shoot, I wish I would have it, but it was like in 2019, it was like $28 million or something like that in NFTs. The next year, it was like $27 billion.
Goodness.
Or $24 billion in people selling it. That's a part I think we can look at and go, there's a lot of absurdity to it now. I really do think that crazy part will kind of level off, and then what we'll see is it being utilized to protect content creators. And because like some of the ones that have been sold, like even this one guy who wrote an article, I think it was for like New York Times or something, he, when writing about the NFTs, then turned around and turned his article into an NFT and made like $600,000 on it. And he was like, oh, okay, I get it now. It's like, yeah, sure, you get it now. Like people have the CEO of Twitter turned his first tweet into an NFT and made money. Wow. But there are like, those are culturally big moments, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so I do think we'll see it utilized so that people that create content can start to protect their creation, make money and stuff like that. I'm all for that. But I just think everyone else, we got to be careful with it.
As a consumer, here's the horror story side of this. One time I talked into a very bad investment.
Twice, Michael.
Twice. I talked Pastor Matthew into something called Litecoin, which I don't even know if it's still around. I don't want to like dog on some random thing. I haven't thought about it in years.
I want to be clear. I better than broke even, but it took me like
5 years.
Not that long. It took me like a year or two. But.
Yeah, so there was this like cryptocurrency that just randomly went through the roof. And here's what I know now. And this is like good advice. This is not a money podcast, but for anybody who cares about this, if you're hearing about it, it's probably too late. Like I'm enough of a casual consumer. If I think I'm on the cutting edge.
While you keep talking, I'm going to find the second dumb advice you gave me.
So there's this thing called Litecoin. And my friend Tyler, who is like on the end, he's like, bro, buy it right now. I went with it, made a couple bucks. I told Matthew about it. And I had Matthew bought it on the most expensive day it ever was in history. And then it crashed. And then I think now you did recuperate that. I think it eventually got
totally
back up.
Yeah,
but
it went back up.
I felt, but that's
and just to be clear, I'm not spending money I can't lose. So it's,
oh, sure. Yeah. And he told me, I felt so bad. I went to his office, like, I feel like, he's like, no, I wouldn't, like, it's all safe money. You don't have to worry about it. I knew I could potentially lose it. But I remember, but that being said, it's a good life lesson of like, all this is still gambling. You know, there's it's just about what people socially want.
And so,
I don't even know what the other one is.
I'll tell you here in a second. So then Michael, when the next day when I was like, man, that seems not to be doing well, he was like, oh yeah, I sold it. And I was like, I'm going to choke you out. No, the other one was Doge. Oh, that might have been you. That might have been someone else.
I think it was Kenny. I think Kenny sold you on Dogecoin.
And Dogecoin or whatever. So again, same thing. I put it like money that I can afford to lose. But like it was just funny because like I did it. I was like, and I was like, never again will I listen to anyone.
It really is just gambling. The Dogecoin thing was like people invested, and then Elon Musk tweeted about it. And
I think that was
skyrocketed. And then it was such a flash in the pan. That stuff has no validity to it. All right, so we're talking about all this weird technology. For some of you listening to this, you're probably like, I hope while it might be above your head of what you currently know, I hope it still makes sense, is approachable.
Yeah.
But the next step in this, I'd love to know about, like, where do you think this is leading us? So this is where we mentioned Neuralink earlier. So more integration into technology. There's this new piece of technology that Elon Musk is out there saying will be, I think he exaggerates. He said 10 years. I don't think that's accurate. Right. But that being said, I'm also a pastor. He could be right. I would probably trust his opinion before mine. But this thing called Neuralink, and I would love to hear like a Christian take on this as a pastor. Yeah. How does this hit you? How does new technology waves like this feel to you? What it is essentially somebody doing surgery, intrusive surgery into your brain and putting a computer in your brain. This sounds like, even as I say this, it feels like a sci-fi movie. This is 100% a real idea that is currently being worked on, and it already exists. So we have people in our church who have had people who had aggressive Parkinson's that have computers put in their brain that do deep brainstem electronic pulsing that makes it so they don't shake anymore.
Right.
Elon Musk's opinion is that he'll be able to fix anything that's wrong with your body that starts in your brain. This will fix that. So if you have like a disease where your body's technically fine, but your brain's not allowing it. I forget there's one, the big disease that does it. I don't remember what it's called. But your brain's not communicating to your body, so your body's essentially not functioning. He's convinced they'll be able to fix that within like 3 years. He thinks they're like right on the cusp of that because they're already doing it with Parkinson's and with things like that by stimulating different parts of your brain, fixing that problem. The next wave of that isn't just fixing medical problems. I think most people can agree that that's like really cool technology. The next wave, though, is the idea of like being able to put, it's what he said about not having to talk anymore. You're downloading and receiving information from people. If you want to learn how to like learn a new language, you do a software update to this computer in your brain that he's calling Neuralink, and now you speak fluent French. If you want to have read this entire encyclopedia, you can. If you want to, that could potentially arrive in our lifetime. And it could change the workplace. Imagine if you're trying to interview for a job and that becomes you have to have Neuralink because it's like it's too efficient. Like we don't have time. We can't deal with somebody 10 years in the past. Like right now we are rapidly up. How does that strike you? Because it does seem viable. That could happen in our lifetime.
Yeah. Wow. Sorry,
that's probably a really tough question.
It is a tough question. I think.
Can I tell you my fear?
Sure, yeah.
So my fear, I hate the idea of being the angry, we talked about the angry old guy yelling at a cloud. Like I hate the idea of just being like not liking new stuff. You know, I was an early adapter with cell phones. You've been an early adapter. Is this just an extension of like, hey, we should early adapt to this too because it's going to take, you know, humanity forward and like cell phones did, like all these things did. It's going to come with consequences, but so is my cell phone. Or does that feel like a red flag as a Christian of like, I'm altering my body at this point? You know what I mean? I'm literally putting a computer in my brain. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I would say that's the answer I was going to give is I think there's something that changes when we are trying to change God's creation. So I think the ultimate root of what our culture is trying to do is to reach immortality, to live forever. So like a big part of it is they're trying to figure out if our brains work by electric pulses and different thoughts, how can we figure that out, map that out, and then someday to download our consciousness into a computer and then basically create bodies that can live forever, and then therefore you would live forever because now all your thoughts. So there's even been movies made about this principle and this concept. And so like they're trying to find a way. So then what if we can protect the thoughts, you know, download someone's consciousness? What if we can then make bodies live for hundreds of years, and then as technology keeps advancing, eventually we'll figure out how to fix every disease? It reminds me of the Tower of Babel in the concept of you get enough people together, and this is even was God's perspective of humanity is you get them together, and if they stay united, there's nothing they can't achieve. This is what God said, and then he separated them because they were in a world broken by sin. Yeah. My theological bent, and I'm not, again, I'm an early adopter of technology. I'm not anti-technology. My personal opinion is we're going to reach a breaking point where God's going to say enough is enough because humanity, if they're left to their own devices, are going to do what they tried to do in Tower of Babel. Yeah. And I think that's when we'll see the end come. I think that's when there'll be the destruction of the wicked, there'll be the reward of the righteous, and we'll experience heaven for eternity. So a lot of that does feel like, some of my own personal fears is like you put something in your brain that can get hacked. A computer can get hacked, and then now all of a sudden, all of a sudden now people can take control. People can destroy your life,
destroy your memories.
Yeah,
and change your memories, hack into your memories, and make them appear different.
And then how would you even know if they're real or not? So to me, that's when it starts getting to like where you're actually adapting a technology for the purpose of changing how we were created. Because this is, I would say, the difference. When something is broken and you're using technology to fix it, so like a person, like we talked about the Parkinson's, or someone loses a limb and they're really developing some advanced technologies that they can tie it into their nerves and now give someone possibility of a hand-like device. I'm all for that because that's not trying to, like, it's not someone cutting off a healthy arm to put in a robotic arm so now that I can shoot a gun better or punch. To me, I would go like, that feels weird. And so like I do think there's that fine line, but the truth of it is Scripture doesn't address it, so we have to really allow the Holy Spirit to guide us in that. So when it comes to the body, there's a lot of pause to that. When we talk about how the church can start to adapt some of the metaverse, I probably have a little bit different perspective on that.
So that's my final question. Is it's kind of two parts. One, do you think as an individual, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, we can cut it out, but do you as an individual think that you will participate as an individual in the metaverse? Like, do you think that, let's say, 5 years from now, that's very commonplace. Like that's the newest wave of social media where it's super cost friendly. Everybody's on it. Right now, there's not that much of a demand. However, this is funny. We were talking about how NFTs and this fake currency. A plot of digital land next to Snoop Dogg's plot of digital land in the metaverse just went for over $1 million that someone bought. Tell me it's not the funniest thing you've ever heard in your entire life.
Does he own it and selling it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he's manipulating his celebrity.
Yeah,
right. I mean, and so people are buying it. Like, that's the kind of silly stuff.
Yeah.
Will I participate?
So what you do as an individual, and then the second part is as a church, how do you feel about churches? So Life Church right now has online metaverse campuses.
Life Church in Oklahoma.
Life Church in Oklahoma. They're, I think, the biggest church in the world at this point if you count online attendance.
They have like 40 campuses and
Insane.
stuff.
So they have adopted a metaverse campus where people, in the same way that I said we're going into a movie theater watching a movie, they're coming into a room watching someone's. Well, I think they actually watch a video of Craig Rochelle, and then the MC and the host is like the digital avatar.
Looks like an avatar. Just be clear, they're the largest church in America. You said the world, but there's some churches in the world that have like 500,000. So I'll answer the first part personally, and then I'd go back to you, and then I'll talk about the church.
Okay.
I don't have any interest in it, but I don't have objection to it. So it'd be one of those things, if I see value added and it's a fun experience, then I'm all for that. I love movies. I don't play video games just because it's just not my personality anymore. I played them growing up and stuff. And actually the virtual reality can make me a little motion sickness because it's like so real. But I honestly, I could see if you came in one day and were like, all right, this experience I just had was so cool. I trust you. So I'd go, I'll check it out. Sure. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I don't have any moral objection to it. I just right now it's not something that I want to do, but I'm not against it.
Yeah, I would say something super similar. For me, it's like I can't tell you why I wouldn't do it. Right now, I just don't want to because it doesn't seem that fun to me. Like like my quality of life. For me to introduce something new into my life, there's a high threshold. Yeah. Because my quality of life is great. Like I have a job that I genuinely enjoy. I have friends that I genuinely enjoy. A career that I genuinely enjoy. You know what I mean? I have all these things. So to add this new thing, I don't have a lot of holes to fill. You know what I mean? So it's like. Sometimes that's when people go to social media or TikTok. It's because they're sad or they're bored or they hate their job, and that's like a release. I don't have any of that, so they would have to offer me something really cool that I don't. Right. You know, so that's. So that being said, maybe someday. Today's not that day because it's like it doesn't seem interesting. But again, I don't have any more.
Yeah, but like think about one day. So you remember? Have you ever seen a movie in IMAX? Mm-hmm. So like that's filmed with different type of film, and it's a more. Not inclusive, what I'm trying to say.
Like immersive?
Immersive, that's the word.
Screens are
immersive.
Bigger, there's like a curve to it.
Right, curve to it's big. I remember the first time I went to one of those, I was like, this is the coolest thing, because it was filmed for that. It was a specific movie for that. Like I could totally see if in the future they have different types of cameras that they're using to make the experience more immersive. Because like think about it, if you're in the middle of a Marvel movie and you can watch it with a headset, and while the fight scene's going on, you can actually look around and watch the fight scene. So you could go like, Captain America, okay, there's Hulk, there's whatever character.
I would do that.
I would do that.
I would not miss that.
Yeah. Right. I would go like, yeah, that's a cooler experience. Especially like for me, the Marvel movies, I love them because I always take my kids to see them, my sons, to go and see them together. It's something we do. Same thing like the Star Wars movies. Mm-hmm. If all of us could go and have that experience together and talk about it, I'm all in. Yeah. So yeah, for that kind of stuff. Now to talk about the church.
Is it safe to say we already kind of try in the smallest way had to do this in COVID?
For sure.
Have this virtual experience for church. I'd love to hear first of all your perspective on that for people who don't, who maybe have attended or they're new to our church or just haven't heard the behind the scenes of what that felt like. I'd love to hear your perspective on that, but also how does this apply to the church going forward?
So COVID season, I did not enjoy it. So what was weird? So COVID hit. We did what we felt was the right thing to do, and if I went back in time, I would do the initial part again. COVID was spreading. At that point, they were saying it's going to be basically going to kill 4% of people. That's what they were expecting. So for a church of our size, of a couple of thousand, that was 80 people, if I think I did the math right. Mm-hmm. And I remember just going, well, I don't want to kill 80 people. Like I don't want that on our conscience, but I don't want to lose 80 people. I love people. And so we talked about it and said, okay. And we thought it'd be 2 weeks at the most, like possibly 3. When it kept spreading and there was still the unknown, and then 3 weeks turned into 4 weeks into multiple months, we knew we had to immediately pivot to go to online. And so we did. We adapted as a church. I was very thankful for our staff. I was thankful for technology. If there was not technology during that time, I think many churches would have collapsed during that time. So technology allowed, this is what's interesting, technology allowed not only for churches to function, but more people than ever were exposed to the gospel. The first Easter, because it was right during the Easter season, the first Easter, Life.Church, which gave the software out basically for all churches to use for free.
Cool.
So cool of them. When they put that out, they reported that it was like the tens of millions of people that logged on was more than anyone had ever logged on in the history of churches ever. Yeah. So this was like a new record. So some people wanted to.
For us, our Easter numbers that year were probably 10 times what they'd be in person.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
If we would get 4,000, or how many would we get in person? 3,000 in person or something.
I know we broke 10. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was crazy.
It was
legit streams, not a 3 seconds. Like legit streams, it was over 10.
So all the people heard the gospel. So all the people that wanted to complain and say like, you shouldn't cancel. I was like, technology in that sense was used for good. At the bare minimum, this sounds like a kind of a jaded way to word it, but we removed the excuse from a lot of people. You've heard the gospel message, right? So now there's a seed that the Holy Spirit can water. So technology was used in a good way. But we did notice that technology lost its luster. People quit engaging online. And then because we weren't having the personal connections, it impacted us emotionally, relationally, spiritually. We had more drama during that time because that was also so COVID made us all just frustrated, that just internal like low-grade anger, frustration, like everybody. I'm saying everyone in our culture. You had to wear masks, and then everyone's different perspectives. There was like the political unrest, the social unrest, racial unrest.
You're stuck in your house, you're not seeing your friends.
You're
not going to church.
All that together, without having church and coming together, we lost our minds. We had a lot more drama, and so when we came out of that, it took us a season. But it was the physical proximity that once again I think brought healing. So that was a weird season. But all that said, going forward into the metaverse, I do think we'll utilize it. This is not some soft way of us announcing something where
no, not at all.
We just led you all to this moment. We have never had a conversation about it beyond like, hey, did you hear Life.Church in Oklahoma is doing it? But I think we will embrace it. And the reason why I think we will embrace it is because I think our culture will. And if you said to me, hey, you have a really cool opportunity down at the gazebo every single Sunday to reach hundreds, I bet you I'd have a service there.
We'd figure it out.
We'd figure it out. I'd be like, all right, let's raise up a team. Let's go there. And so like, if you say to me, hey, there's this whole community of people that don't go to church, have never gone to church, but they're willing to check you out because it's super safe, because they're just at their homes. They can leave anytime. They'll check you out. You have the opportunity to reach them and tell them about Jesus. No brainer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. 100%. And so what I would say, here's the tension. I think somehow in our culture, and this would probably be violating the rules of the metaverse, in some part of me though is going to push for them to make physical contact at some point. And maybe someone could convince me otherwise. Don't stress that because this is a new reality. But I just based on my convictions and like Hebrews says, do not forsake the gathering. Like my generation would say that's physical gathering. The next generation would go, no, that's metaverse gathering. And so we're going to have to ride that tension and figure out where the greatest fruit is. But
so I totally agree. I think that I remember we had this conversation years, like before COVID, way before Metaverse was announced or that anything was about that. We had that probably was a debate, I guess. We were at a staff retreat. We're talking about, do we want to do an online thing? So we didn't do online. We would release our sermons that week, but we never did online streaming of our campus or of our what's actually happening live on a Sunday. For a couple of logistical reasons. One, it's like really hard to do well and to make like music sound good live. It's like super hard to do live. So we only really made that jump in COVID out of necessity. But I remember we were having a staff conversation about it with our directors about the pros and cons. And the example that I used is that, can you be married to somebody and not live together? You know what I mean? Like, can I have a meaningful relationship with my wife and never like hold her or like just or be close and come home and see her face and see how she responds to stuff? Now, this is coming from someone who I did 4 years on and off of long distance dating. Me and my wife, we started dating when we were like 14, dated all the way till we graduated college. So like 4 of those years, I'm in San Diego, she's in Minneapolis and in Ohio. So I'm very comfortable understanding like you can still have intimacy and a meaningful relationship in a long distance fashion, but can I do that forever? And I believe the answer is no. And again, maybe you're right in that like, I do think the next generation will be like, you're dumb. Like Metaverse has gotten so good. It's, it is just as, but for me right now, as is, you'd have to really convince me because it's like, no, man, there's something about being in proximity to the people you care about. So I agree. I think Metaverse, it'd be cool to utilize it in a way for outreach, in a way to deliver what God is doing at our church to people who don't have access to it. But I would agree. My biggest hope was eventually for those people to assimilate into an in-person church, whether it be one of our campuses or even another or some other church, Because I do believe that having that proximity, or doing both. So my cousin Kendra does this every Sunday. She lives in Payne, Ohio, which I don't even know where it is. It's like hours away. Real small town. So as a small town, she goes to church every Sunday. She ties to that church. And to be frank, it's not, I feel like I can't say too much now because I said her name. I don't think nobody knows who I'm talking about. She's not crazy about that church, but she knows that she wants to go to in-person church. Yeah. If you some reason know my cousin Kendra, I'm not trying to dog on their church. This is just her talking to me about it. For some reason, it's just not her preference. It's not her worship style, things like that, but she still loves it. So she watches our live stream every week. So she goes to their service, which is early, then streams our 11 o'clock. Mm-hmm. I think that's great too, to be able to still provide like something supplementary to people. But I do think there's something to be said of getting in person with people long term that's just a little healthier. Like so, and I could be.
And I agree. Where I think to our advantage is I think we are designed in a way that we long for that, and so I don't think the virtual reality will ever be able to replace it if, and this is a big if people get a taste of it. So if there comes a generation that is raised on virtual reality, then that will be the standard that they know as normal. So like it's, what I'm talking about. Any person who is raised in craziness doesn't know it's craziness because it's their normal. Mm-hmm. But when you get connection and you talk to someone and you have real relational connection, I think there's just nothing that can replace that. Yeah. So I think that the tension we'll have in the future is as people become more connected in the virtual world with being able to work from home or remote working, I should say, then they're engaging community via the metaverse, that we're going to have to find a way through teaching and through invitation to get them physically to connect. And I think once they do that, they'll see the value in it. At least I hope they do. But all that said is we can't take a posture that we just close our minds and say no.
I agree with that.
We can't go like, nope, this is bad because it's not my preference. And that's the key. There's so much that we do that's not my preference. I think people don't understand that. Being the primary leader, I think they make the assumption that we've built a church around Matt's perspective. And I think you'd be the first to say that's not true.
No, my job is to prevent. My job is to execute your vision. But in executing your vision, you've asked that to be a part of my job. Is to not just like pander to your preference, just to give you creative pushback and to say, how can we do that? That's 100% a part of it.
There would be a rare occasion where I veto something where I just go, I don't like that for this reason. Yeah, definitely. But it's typically not even a stylistic thing. There's more of a practical side to it. So, more functional. I think this discussion's been great because I think hopefully it just gets all of us having an open mind to what's going on, but not in a we're scared of it, but more of a let's learn. Let's learn together and let's figure out how the Holy Spirit can guide us to utilize this in a way that can bring blessing to people's lives. And I think whenever the church or anyone just takes a posture, this is bad, I'm going to mark the line in the sand, I'm going to dig a trench and fight against it, I think they just disconnect from a generation. So I think if the next generation sees us as militant against it, all it's going to do is hurt us because they're going to go like, what? You guys are weird. Like you guys are getting worked up over something. You don't even know it. And so I want to learn more about it and then find a way to maximize it.
Yeah, well said. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us again for the I Could Be Wrong podcast. It means so much to us that you would spend this time, that you would be open to the kinds of conversations that we're having and the way we're communicating it. And I would ask for two things. The first thing is that if you found value in this, send it to somebody. If you know somebody who is interested in this specific topic or just interested in healthy conversation, send it over to them, share it on Facebook, wherever you share things at. And the second thing, if you have any questions that you think might be cool if we covered it on this podcast, or even just a question that we might not be able to get to on the podcast, we could still answer you individually and have a dialogue about it. Feel free to email us at ICouldBeWrong@thetree.Church. Thanks.